Start now?
Yeah, you start now.
Professor Dr. Nilesh Pramod Kode was aware of the greatness of Ayurveda from a very young age. A world-renowned Ayurveda physician who was patronized by the Portuguese regime in Goa was his relative, namely late Dada Vaidya. The seed of Ayurveda, this shown, further developed as he trained in Ayurveda in Bangalore, Karnataka. Besides academics, Dr. Kode always was keen to learn more about the clinical application of Ayurveda and how best he could be of assistance in relieving the pain and suffering of the patients. On completion of graduation, Dr. Kode had the opportunity to specialize in Sharirachana from the University of Pune. Dr. Kode had been associated with Gomantak Ayurvedic Mahavidyalaya and Research Center in Shiroda, Goa for the last 27 years. In his capacity as the professor and head of the Department of Rachana Sharir, he has ignited many a young mind to achieve excellence in Ayurveda. A multifaceted personality with varied interests in music, fashion, traveling, and food, he had been an ambassador of Ayurveda not only in India but also in UK and USA as well, where he has been practicing and teaching for the last 17 years. Expanding his interests in people with special needs, he is the director, Domain International USA India, founder director for Ashwas, specializing in clinical music therapy, chairman Sri Sai Swadhyaya Samiti, a spiritual trust, a renowned academician idolized by his students and a skilled clinician revered by his patient. Dr. Kode maintains he is still learning every day. And naturally, sir, you are presently posted as a professor and head PG Department of Rachana Sharir and chairman Board of Studies Preclinical, Goa University. Sir, I don't think that this introduction is complete in itself, but it is a brief caricature of your bio data, and you have a lot of skills, and you have a lot of dimensions. I appreciate your efforts throughout since beginning. You have been working in the field of Sharir and medicine as well. So now I request such an esteemed personality, Professor Kode sir, to please share your views in regards to aspect and spiritual applied and spiritual aspect of Sharir, that is physical body. Dr. Nilesh, sir, you're welcome, sir. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh Sharma. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be amongst all of you today. Yes, I do know the topic is slightly different from what we would have expected about Sharira. The moment we say Sharira, we all discuss about the dead body, its virtues, its design and everything else. But little do we know, or little do we think, that the working is entirely upon a live body. So this is what actually brought me to the thought that always in discussion of Sharira, we end up discussing about the body and its applications with respect to a disease factor. We never ever stop to discuss as to why we have a beautiful body like this. What is the design? What is the structure? What do we use it for? How do we use it? And why is it exactly necessary? The entire medical system is designed based on the body, certainly. But when it comes to studying clinical aspects of it, it is always taken into account that the present body its ailments, and we search for a pathogen which is actually responsible for creating the disorder. I would like to do a small presentation on this now, which I think, if allowed to share my screen, I would like to put up on the presentation.
हरीश जी देख लीजिएगा प्लीज, सी है ना?
Yes, sir. You can share, sir, screen.
Yeah, thank you. Is this visible to all, and am I audible clearly?
Yeah. You are audible and it is visible as well.
Thank you very much.
Please make it
Well,
full screen. Na? Please make it full screen. No?
it is full screen, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's open.
Yeah. Well, welcome to this short journey that I have taken to probably make a change in the lives of those who are listening to me at the moment. Applied and spiritual aspects of Shari, the physical body. This encompasses, the presentation encompasses as to why we have a body, as to how a disease has been created, and what we need to do in order to protect the body in the forthcoming years, and what exactly we need to prepare for the next embodiment. It includes all these 4 things. At the end, I will conclude with this thing as to how, where, when, why, birth, death, and the next lifetime. Yes. A few questions to begin with. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why at all did I come? And is this the end? What next? When we take birth, we don't realize at that moment who we are. Even if we have spent a lifetime, we are yet to find who I am. Well, before taking birth, where was I? Where did I come from? And if I have taken birth, why at all did I come? Was I not happy where I was? Was that stage or status of existence not sufficient for me to live there? Why at all did I take up this embodiment? Well, I have taken the embodiment. What am I supposed to do next? From birth to death, we go through these things in life. Is this all we are here for? Being born, going to school, then graduating, meeting people, living in a house, starting with a family, then doing my work around old age, finally into the grave, wherein we say rest in peace. Was this all that I came on this earth for? Was there something else more? Or is there something else more? Well, let us first understand what is life. Is it seeking into one embodiment and then coming across life? And how at all did we get the human form of life? Well, to begin with, let us go back to wherein the origin of creation took place. And as we all in Ayurveda mostly follow the Sankhya form of creation, it started with Avyakta in the form of Prakriti and Purusha, and Mahat, and then the Ahankara, and then the origin of the Sattva, the Rajas, and the Tamas. From there came the evolution of the sense organs and the 5 Tanmatras and the mind. Well, was this all that was there? How did the life come into existence? I come to the term Panchatanmatras first, because we have all so far understood the relationship of Panchamahabhutas and our existence. Well, let us take the first element that we, or the first life form that we see that came into existence when, according to the science that we study. And let's take the story of the amoeba. The amoeba has got no basic solid structure, but it is more fluid and there's no movement. From there, it came, it evolved further and came into a detailed structured life, which is called as a paramecium, which was unicellular again. From there, we came into another detailed structure, which is called as a eugenia, which had movement around it, and which was again a solid structure. And from there, the life processes began. Now, every of the life process that has originated has come out of the Panchamahabhutattvas, and the Panchamahabhutattvas have originated out of the Panchatanmatras. The Panchatanmatras are nothing but the 5 subtle elements. Now, when the subtle elements, we need to keep that into mind, because the entire life from here on is totally dependent on these Panchatanmatras. Any life form that you take in depends on this Panchatanmatras. And as we all know what the Panchatanmatras are, the Shabda, the Sparsha, the Rupa, the Rasa, and the Gandha, which again are associated with our sense organs. So a life form has been given these Tanmatras to actually absorb in the knowledge, live that life form, evolve out further, wherein he moves to another life form wherein he can use more than one of his sense organs. At the moment, it might not seem rational to you what I'm speaking about, but as I come to the end, we will actually have a clear picture as to how we all begin with it. As an amoeba, though it has got all the 5 tanmatras in it, most of them are in the suptavastha, or most of them are in the latent phase, wherein they are inert, they are not in use as much. But as they grow gradually from one form to the other, they start expressing the usage of this sense organ. If you look at those animals which move very close to the earth, their sense of smell is very well developed. From there, slowly, we go into the reverse process of having subtle senses developed one by one. Beyond this, when we see the Panchatanmatras, tamas charged by rajas with specific units of energy is what we call as Panchatanmatra. They are a series of infra-atomic particles, possess definite physical characteristics, but basically are packets of energy. Appear in specific order of succession. Well, potential of sound stimuli, or the Shabda Tanmatra. It possesses physical energy of vibration, and it is called as Shabda Tanmatra. It is constantly in a vibratile stage and has the maximum amount of energy. The next Tanmatra is the Sparsha Tanmatra, or the tactile stimuli. It possesses physical energy of mechanical pressure or impact, by virtue of which we can feel, we have the sensation of sparsha or touch. But along with that, it also possesses the potential of the first, that is the Shabda Tanmatra, in a latent form. Beyond this, we have the potential for the third Tanmatra, that is the light stimuli. The light stimuli, or the Tanmatra for Agni or Rupa. It possesses heat, light, color, radiation, and is known as the Rupa Tanmatra. It possesses characteristics of course, the Shabda and the Sparsha. But both of them in the latent form. The next is the rasa tanmatra, or the taste stimuli. Possesses the potential of viscous attraction and taste, also called as the rasa tanmatra. Herein it possesses the quality characteristics of shabda, sparsha, rupa in the latent form. And the last of the tanmatras is the potential for smell stimuli, or the gandha tanmatra. It is a cohesive effect. It has a potential of cohesive effect and is known as gandha tanmatra. In addition, it also possesses characteristics of the shabda, the sparsha, the rupa and the rasa, but very much in the latent form. Now, if you look at the sequence of existence that we have seen, it is, we began with shabda and finally ended in rasa tanmatra, or finally ended in the gandha tanmatra. When you have the formation of life itself in garbha, in garbhavastha, or when the fetus is being formed, we know the sense organs that take development first over here. The ear is the first sense organ to be developed. The eyes, which is when in garbhavastha or when inside the womb, doesn't have the potential to see. But as soon as it is born, it is later that we see. Beyond this, shabda, the sparsha, that is a sensation of touch. I'm sorry, I should have gone in that sequence. It still feels. A mother can move her hand over the womb and the child can experience the sense of touch of the mother. So the shabda and the sparsha tanmatras both are developed in the garbhavastha, or both are developed in the fetal life. But as the fetus leaves the womb and comes out, the next three sense organs come into existence. That is the rupa tanmatra, wherein the fetus can see light potential first. Then it can taste. Initially, if you feed the fetus anything, it takes it inside. But after a few months of existence, it will not like to take in certain substances and it will throw it out. The moment you put it in the mouth of a child, it will throw it out. And last of the tanmatra to be developed, after about 2 years or a year and a half of existence, is the sense of smell. I recall this very well when my daughter was born, that she sat on the potty and she said, "Baba, I can smell something that is different. I can smell." Now, this word that she uttered, "I can smell," was after a very long time of existence. Till then, she did not have the ability to smell. So this is the sequence in which the exhibition of sense organs one by one, which is the existence of Panchatanmatras, takes place. Now, if you notice, sound, or the Shabda Tanmatra, is purest form of existence. If you see over here, that it is the first form of existence of a Tanmatra, it does not have the potentials of any other element or any other Mahabhutas engrossed or entangled within itself, but it has the purest form of existence. That means your sound has an individual existence. That means your sound can exist by itself without the existence of all the other four. And it gives to say that this sound has the potential for maximum amount of energy as such. Now, formation of the human body, we go from here. Union of sperm and ovum is called as fertilization. Now, that is the definition that we all have heard right from our school days. And even now, if you look at fertilization as a definition put in the Gray's Anatomy, it all says about union of sperm and ovum is called as fertilization. Is this complete? if we had to just get the sperm and ovum together to fertilize, wherein we have seen they exist by themselves, when they come in contact with each other is the time they should be fertilizing, then why this unexplained infertility? I mean, most of us who are doctors today or Ayurveda physicians, one part of the patients that come to you are experiencing unexplained infertility. They have gone from pillar to post and even tried various methods wherein the success rate of artificial IVFs or IUIs is just 20% and is even coming lesser than that today. So why this unexplained infertility, wherein we have perfectly grown seeds as put forth by the modern science? Let us go back and review the so-called Ayurveda, which most of the scientific world is finding difficult to accept and come to terms with as an advanced science. Ayurveda would have defined it as a combination of Shukra, that is the sperm, Shonita, that is the ovum, and in conjunction with Jiva, or the life substance. Now, Ayurveda did not have a laboratory to talk about the qualities and show about the qualities of Jiva, or actually bring it as a proof in front of all of us. So Ayurveda had described then 5,000 years back, wherein we have records, as life substance, that is Shukra and Shonita, in conjunction with life substance, that is Jiva, where especially in the womb is called or defined as a Garbha, or is defined as a fetus or a zygote. Now, when we talk about life substance, we see, you can see it on the picture over here, the sperm and the ovum go together to form the zygote. But unless there is life substance in that, how will they go further and expand further to produce different cells and go further to produce a human body? Well, it is said in our text that soul in conjunction of the mind, the manas, which has got the trigunas present in that, the sattva, the rajas, and the tamas will go further to form the zygote. I will repeat again. So, using the medium of mind, and the mind which has got the qualities of the sattva, the rajas, and the tamas will go further to form the zygote, just this way. Let me go back and repeat the action. Absolutely beautiful, isn't it? Yes. So, the simile that is used over here was we cannot see the entry of soul because we do not have a developed laboratory which can actually show you the entire entry process of life substance inside. So the simile that was used over here is that when you concentrate the sun rays through the magnifying glass over a bunch of straw, after a while you can see the straw catches fire. You actually haven't seen the heat pass through. You actually haven't seen the rays pass through. But this is what you see. And that's exactly the simile that was given thousands of years back, which spoke about the entry of soul within the body as such. Now, what are the components that go to form the zygote? Yes, the components of the fetus are basically contributed from the father, the paternal components through the shukra, from the mother, the maternal components from the shonita. The third components which come are coming from the maternal diet, that is the rasa. And the fourth group of components comes from the soul. Yes, we've heard a lot about soul. For those of you who've been following philosophy, would have every time heard that the soul is nirguna or nirakara. Nirguna or nirakara means it doesn't show any gunas, or it doesn't have any form of akara, or it doesn't have any form of shape and size. This is what we've always heard about. But here in Charaka goes to mention that the soul has its own components. Fascinating, isn't it? Where did the components of the soul come from if it doesn't have any shape, any size? I will go further and explain this. The body is formed out of these four components, and the soul is seen to be carrying the four subtle bhutas: sparsha tanmatra, rupa tanmatra, rasa tanmatra, and gandha tanmatra. Please see over here that akasha tanmatra, the tanmatra for akasha, that is shabda, is not found. So the soul which exists along with manas and the fourth tanmatra is called as the sukshma sharira, or the subtle body. Well, we have seen, we will see further as to how it changes the shape and structure. Now, the entry of the soul into the body is guided by the entire association of the past deeds, that is your past life. Yes, my dear ladies and gentlemen, the science asks for a proof of what happens to the past life. If I go to speak about it, an hour will not be sufficient. They say, where is the past life? How can you prove that there is a past life? I will go further and explain later on, if time permits, about all existences of this. But as said in Ayurveda, guided by the associated past action, the tanmatras along with the manas travel with the soul, and it is called as transmigration from body to body to body. That means take birth, that is from subtle to gross and gross to subtle. Subtle to gross and gross to subtle. Take existence, develop a body, finish its three stages of existence. That is, three stages of existence of the body are the balya, that is the childhood, the tarunya or the youth, and the vardhakya or the aging, the aging process, the old age. Once these three phases are complete, then you drop the embodiment because you require more energy to develop your spiritual virtues or your spiritual self and accept a new embodiment. And all of this is responsible by what you have done in the past, your past life. For getting a new body, your design is put in the past life, wherein this body will be dependent on. So there are 16 bhutas present at the time of conception. 4 that are contributed by the sperm, 4 that are contributed by the ovum, 4 that are contributed by the rasa or the nutritive material which the mother consumes, and 4 are by the soul. That makes it together 16. Now you will ask me a question as to how can you say that the soul contributes its elements. Once the soul enters inside, along with the shukra and the Shonita, that is the Mahabhutas of paternal contribution, Mahabhutas of the maternal contribution, Mahabhutas of the contribution of the Rasa. It is the contribution of the Mahabhutas by the soul which will decide the proportion of which Mahabhuta should be in what quantum in a physical body that we call as unique. Now structurally, if you go and see, the sperm and ovum have got the same structure, whether it is my sperm or somebody else's sperm or a third person's sperm. When you examine it under the microscope, it shows the same structure, though the genetic composition might differ. The sperm, the ovum, when we see it as we look at a solid form, when we study anatomy, you will see that these structures are similar. The food that everybody consumes is almost the same. We don't consume something that is different as such, but most of us consume the same kind of food. Yes, the differences are brought in by the food that is consumed by all the others. But combination of these three things, if you see, is not the same for everyone. Each one has its own unique combination. And the uniqueness of this is brought forth by nothing but the soul. It is once the entry of the soul happens within the zygote, that is when the uniqueness of the Mahabhutas contributed inside, Mahabhutas put inside will be seen. You will see that if you have siblings, you have brothers, sisters, etc. as such, as siblings, they are born out of your own parents or the same parents. Are they the same? Do they have the same structures as you have? Similarities might be there because the genome is the same. But certainly they have got different qualities. This even goes to wherein identical twins are produced or monozygotic twins are produced, wherein you have the zygotes that gets divided into two parts, a single zygote that gets divided into two parts, wherein you see the genetic material is the same, but their bodies are not the same. They are not formed with the same qualities. The gunas change. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. The gunas which are contributed by the soul. The qualities which are contributed by the soul. Where did the soul acquire these qualities? The soul acquired these qualities as a refinement, or I wouldn't use the term only refinement, because no two bodies are the same ever. Over the long periods of existence that he has had in the form of life. Life source began as a unicellular animal till it went to accept the form of a human being. In a unicellular animal, wherein we go from a unicellular animal to the group of, say, Hydra, and then from Hydra we've gone, as we've learned further in biology, to different families and invertebrates, then vertebrates, etc. And as you see in each of these, their sense organs are uniquely developed in one lifetime, wherein they may be able to use one or two of their sense organs and simultaneously until we finally achieve the form of a human being, wherein we can simultaneously use all 5 sense organs as such. And beyond this, when we've used all 5 sense organs, we go further and start the journey of developing our own souls, which we call as refinement of these sense organs. And when I say refinement of the sense organs, what do I mean? I mean to say that I am able to use my sense organs more than its capacity. That means if I am to use my eyes, I will be using, if on a spiritually developed or an advanced stage of existence, I will be able to sit over here and see what is happening in the United States over there, in whichever part of the United States over there. Yeah, or I will be able to hear whatever is happening without the use of an external aid, what is being spoken in England by my friends, or I will be able to smell whatever is being cooked at my home sitting over here. So this is called as refinement, wherein you can extend your own sense organs beyond what is bhutadi, or what you can see, or what is perceivable, or what is acceptable around. You develop your sense organs beyond the capacities, and that is what is called as refinement of life. And that is exactly what I mean by collection of things over multiple lifetimes. The exhibition, the example to this, what I would say about refinement of gunas that we have is, let us take an example of a singer. For all we in India know about Lata Mangeshkar, who is one of the most beautiful goddess of voice we hear. Or you can think about all of us watch these programs on channels every day, wherein we see small children singing. To what levels? It is as if they are born with the qualities of a refined classical singer. How did they get to have these qualities? How did they manage to sing so beautifully at such a small age or such a young age? It is certainly a collection over a lifetime, and then over multiple lifetime, which brings in refinement in the gunas. I will give you my own example as such. When I joined Ayurveda, before joining Ayurveda, very little was heard about Ayurveda in Goa. Goa was ruled by the Portuguese, wherein you must have heard in my introduction, wherein they said that I have a lineage which comes from one of the most celebrated Vaidyas during the Portuguese reign. I make this contradictory statements. A celebrated Vaidya during the Portuguese reign, and I say the same time that Ayurveda was not allowed to be practiced during the Portuguese time. Yes, Ayurveda was not allowed to be practiced during the Portuguese time. And a small deviation from our from our journey now is that when Ayurveda was not allowed to be practiced during the Portuguese time, it was a ban on Ayurveda, and anybody practicing Ayurveda was imprisoned or put behind the bars. So this Vaidya family was the only family which was, along with a few other families in Goa, who were allowed to practice Ayurveda. It so happened that the then Governor General's only son, who was a precious child, was sick with urine retention. And in those days, let me tell you the story that Goa boasts of the first Western medical college in Asia. So you can very well imagine it was quite advanced medically from the Western side, much before these medical colleges of the modern side were established in India. So Goa boasts of the first medical college all around Asia, to be precise, and that with those kind of facilities available, and they were not able to do anything for this small child who was suffering from urine retention. And finally, the Governor General's wife was told that there is this gentleman who lives in a village who will come, who would be able to treat you. And since he was a precious child, she went and approached him, and he was invited. And let me cut it short. And he went and he applied a paste of certain herbs that were given. And by the end of about 45 minutes, the child passed urine. It is since then Portuguese gave Goa, allowed the Vaidya family to practice. The second thing over here is Gracia de Horta, which is a collection of medicinal herbs which was studied by the Portuguese, was first the connection between the Western world and the herbal industry in India, which is the only collection of books. Now I'm speaking about this is because as there was no introduction to Ayurveda throughout my existing years up to 12th class, and there was no association with Indian languages much except for Hindi and a little local language for Marathi. I had no association with Sanskrit at all. When I went to learn Ayurveda, the initial days were, I mean, what is this? Is this very scientific? It is talking about the existence of soul, which I've never heard about, the Sanskrit and all the other things that we talk about. Where did it all come from? And by the end of first year, I was finding it that I am not fit into this. But gradually, as I introspected, I could understand the basic concepts of Vata, Pitta and Kapha. And if I put in an effort, I would understand it quite easily and accept it very logically. That led me into thinking as to how is it possible for any human being who has not learned all these things over a long period of time, come to finally accept things and then work on them. That is the past connection. So this is how I would say these gunas were put into me thousands of years back perhaps, and I have carried them on in this lifetime. And I'm sure all those Ayurveda graduates who are with me will understand it and accept this, because when we all enter the Ayurveda stream, we all feel lost. But by the time we leave the Ayurveda stream, we are so satisfied that this is something beautiful and glorious. And we are all glad that we accepted this science, or we are glad we joined this stream. Now we go to the process of creation. When creation was created, it moved along with the sattva and the rajas and the 5 sense organs and the 5 motor organs, that is Ekadasha Indriyas, with mind. I'm talking about this because as we move further, we join in to gather more information regarding the same. As we have creation, we also have the process of dissolution. That is, if we have creation wherein we have all these things that are created over a long period of time, that is, as we evolve, when I go to the third slide, which shows creation, this is in the process of creation of the human body, wherein we have the 5 sense organs develop, the 5 motor organs develop, with the combination of sattva and rajas, and then the mind, which is evolved from ahankara or the ego, which coordinates all these activities. What happens at the time of destruction or dissolution? The soul dissociates himself from all these manifestations. Now, which are the manifestations the soul dissociates himself from? The manifestations which allow the soul to enjoy existence, which allow the soul to enjoy its existence. That is all the sense organs, all the motor organs, and the mind. Now, how is the process? Yeah, it gets into reabsorption or the process of absorption. The 5 elements which are there go back into the 5 tanmatras, the subtle elements. The 5 subtle elements, along with the sensory, motor, that is the sense organs, and the motor organs, and the mind, go and join the ahankara again, or the ego again. The ahankara goes back to the buddhi, and the buddhi goes back to the mula prakriti, or the buddhi goes back to the initial phase of existence. Just as we had the third slide talking about existence there, herein we have the reverse process, the reversal happening. Now we all say we do dehadharana, or we all take up this embodiment. Why do we take up this embodiment? Is to bring the Chaitanya into existence, into the solid form, into the expressive form. And why do we bring it into the expressive form? To accumulate knowledge of the Srishti, or to accumulate knowledge of the nature around us. There's so much of knowledge existing in this, and the progression of your soul can only take place by accumulation of this knowledge. And wherein the knowledge is stored, it is stored in the Chaitanya. Which knowledge is stored in the Chaitanya? Or the entire knowledge of the Srishti gets stored in Chaitanya. How is this done? Now, as we see, I go to the next slide, pardon me. Avinashi. Avinashi is a substance that is indestructible. In most of the philosophies, we hear that this body is destroyed, this body is destructible. But I would like to question, is it really that the body gets destroyed? No. The soul and the body, both are actually indestructible. When you go to the subtleties of it, you will realize. The Atma is Avinashi, the soul is Avinashi, and the Deha or the body is also Avinashi. How? This body is formed out of the Panchamahabhutas, which are forever existing eternally. After that, the same Panchamahabhutas get assimilated into the Srishti, and when we accept the new embodiment, we use the same Paramanus or we use the same molecules of the Panchamahabhutas. So wherein did the body get destroyed? It is only the permutations and combinations of the Panchamahabhutas, that is the elements, which move away from each other at the time of destruction, and the same combination come again together at the time of formation of this. So, in case if it wasn't Avinashi, that the Deha was not Avinashi, indestructible, the Atma would have never been able to combine with it. Like oil and water can never combine together. You always have this mutual combination between the soul and the body, which goes towards forming of a human body. If it was like oil and water, we would have separate existences and we wouldn't have been combining together. So as we go subtly towards existence of the soul, along with the Panchamahabhutas, we know that the soul and the Panchamahabhutas live together in the form of Panchatanmatras. Only when it comes into expression is the time wherein we can see them. Now we shall go to see what features, the factors which go towards the growth of the fetus. How does a fetus or how does human body grow? Because on this is dependent what kind of body you will have as you grow into a human being. So you have maternal factors, you have paternal factors, you have dietary factors, and then the last two, which have not even been thought about by the modern science, they yet to come to terms with it, are the factors that are related to your mind and those factors which are congenial factors. Yes. Maternal factors, these are the ones, your skin, your blood, your muscle, your fat, and all soft organs are contributions from the mother. Your hair, your beard, your teeth, your bone, your tendons, and all the hard substances and your blood vessels are the contributions from the genetic part of the father. Congenial factors, these are features which make one's congenial to her. Freedom from disease, absence of idleness, absence of greediness, normal voice, complexion, Satmya figures, these are called as constantly being in happiness, perspicuity of the organisms, and high qualifications. Yeah. Then the dietary part, which is very, very important, because what goes inside goes to produce the body further. It is the growth of the body, it's attachment of life. Now, attachment of life means the body goes to seek food. If you are hungry, you will go. Just give me a moment. If you're hungry, you will go in search of food. If you're hungry, you will search for food. Why do you do that? Why do you always do that? It is because you are seeking to continue life, right? You are seeking to continue life, and that is why the soul normally does that. Attachment of life, nourishment, feeling of satisfaction or contentment, wherein one is content looking at life, one is happy. This is dependent on what we eat. The moment you eat something is the time that you first get your contentment. Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm means you are enthusiastic towards doing something. If you have not eaten your food, you don't have enthusiasm. Energy levels. Your energy levels are constantly maintained by eating food, what goes inside. And last, it is complexion. That is, your varna is maintained by maintained by the food that we eat. I'm sorry, there was a small gap in my presentation. Now the soul related contributions. Birth in a specific species. That means the soul chooses where he is going to be born. Knowledge about oneself. Therein you go to seek the knowledge about oneself. Your mind, your appearance, your respiration. You will say respiration is dependent on soul. Yes, when you sleep, who respires? How does your body breathe in when your sense organs are all closed? A specific complexion. This is something very beautiful that I had introspected upon. Very often I have got couples coming to me and both of the parents are dark, but I wonder how the child born is of a very fair complexion or a wheatish complexion. So where did the change happen? Happiness and sorrow, it is dependent on your karma. So those are contributory factors from the soul. And longing and hatred, these also are contributions from the soul. And mind related. Consciousness, retention power, you can retain whatever you think about. You can retain whatever you've learned. Your knowledge, your memory, your pride, and your perception of sense organs. Though you have got sense organs, very often you can see children who are born, who are unable, though they are born with their sense organs, they are not able to get the knowledge exhibited by or taken in by their sense organ and understand it and figure it out and express it out again. Autism and other things that you've heard about very recently, but this all happens because the mind is not in coordination with the sense organs. In my next slide, you will come across and see it. Why? Now, if this is all the trouble that I have to go through to take a birth, why the hell should I take birth? Was I not happy to stay up? Pardon my language, but this is exactly I kept asking myself. If I have to undergo this entire process of coming and living on this earth, was I not happy to have lived up over there, wherever I was existing? I don't know where. Yes? But as I learned further, it was to achieve higher levels of existence. Now, the higher levels of existence means wherein I am able to help another soul overcome his miseries. This is called as progression of the soul. It is only possible by accepting the medium of a body. It is only when the soul enters this elemental phase that progression is possible. And how? Because the body possesses sense organs by virtue of which it gains knowledge, and the knowledge which is gained by the soul. Now, who plays a major role in this? Your mind plays a major role in this. It becomes a functional entity only when it is in presence of a physical body. Otherwise, up above we have seen the soul lives with its subtle body in association with the mind and the four tanmatras. Right? Now, how does one derive knowledge? One derives knowledge from object to sense organ, from the sense organ through the mind, and from the mind into the soul. This is the process of sense organs and knowledge development. What is the aim of life? In Charaka, when we studied, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha are said to be the four Purusharthas. And these Purusharthas can be done only if we have a good physical body. So my dear all fellow Sharira people, remember that we are the first people before going to Chikitsa who can understand the existence and give the patient guidance on the formation of a good physical body. I'll come to that later on. But when we speak about achieving the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, that means virtue, earning wealth, enjoying the physical body, and then finally drawing your senses back to the soul and improving upon the soul by virtue of which you detach yourself from surroundings. Salvation does not necessarily mean that you do not want to take another birth. It is not possible like that. Unless and until you have achieved a stage wherein all your sense organs are so well developed that your subtle senses are also developed, and even by your sight you are able, even by when you see someone, you are able to make a change of his existence of karma, which is only possible to very few people, which is another topic which can be discussed later on. Now, when can we have the four Purusharthas achieved? When the energy of the body and the elements of the soul are in the balanced state. We all know that we come with a certain quantum of elements or the energy of the body. The basic elements of the body are the earth and the water, Prithvi and Aap. And the elements of the soul are fire, wind and space. You will say, if everything is Panchabhautik, why am I talking about these things? All of you all have seen a dead body, touched a dead body, felt a dead body. You will notice that what remains behind are just the elements of earth and water. Whereas what has left, the body doesn't have movement, the body doesn't have warmth, and all the spaces within the body have collapsed. This goes just by logic to say that the elements of fire, wind and space were the elements of the soul, and these have left the body. So it is possible wherein you have a balanced phase of energy of the body and the energy of the soul. How can I explain to you this very simply? Let us take an example when we have overeaten. You know, when it's delicious food, it is just natural that we eat a little more than what we can. It's as if there is no tomorrow. Now, the physical body has got the capacity to digest only a certain amount of food. Then who digests the remaining amount of food? That is when you draw in the energy of the soul to digest the remaining amount of food. There have been times where you have not been eating anything for a prolonged period of time as well. How do you survive? Again, you use the energy of the soul to survive. So that is what I talk about as a life substance, which in quantum physics you can say is a substance of energy. Yes, I don't have the laboratory to show you, but its existence is logically understood. Now, I spoke about it all this time. It's almost an hour I've been speaking. How do I apply this knowledge? Sharira people will ask me, you have been speaking so much, where do I apply this knowledge? Yes, in Chikitsa I apply this knowledge, in treatment I apply this knowledge. But then I understand the causative factor for the disease. Why is the disease caused? First and the foremost, I will use the past life, which has not been mentioned in our text over here. Our text mentioned about Asatmendriyartha Sanyoga, Pradnyaparada and Parinama. That means my text talks about intellectual blasphemy, that is Pradnyaparada, Asatmya Indriya Sanyoga, that talks about unwholesome contact with senses, and Kala or Parinama. But along with that, I have learned over the long term of practice that you need to understand what happened in the past life. Why is this physical body having a form of a disorder, which even by giving so much of medication or giving so much of medication cannot, or is difficult to cure or is difficult to handle. That is when your little bit of healing process should start by the energy which the physician should contribute towards treating his patients. So if I have to apply the same knowledge for treatment purpose, it's a beautiful example Charaka has given, that we always have to prepare beforehand in order that floods may not damage the crops as they did in the past. You have a history that it rains and the floods damage the crop. So you build a dam and you prevent that whole amount of water coming to it. So the dam is a preventive measure. Similarly, we all need to build up a body which is going to prevent further formation of a disease. How advanced scientifically we are. Ayurveda is not just jadi-puti, medicine, treatment and cure. It has got such a vast amount of knowledge and intellect put into that the potential is so immense that one lifetime is not sufficient to explore even the tip of the iceberg. So the prevention can be done by you. And it is not only talking about the physical body. I will move a little ahead. How? From the spiritual aspect, we have been told that you need to chant, you need to say your prayers, you need to do meditation. And the last, which I have said very boldly over here, is paropakara. Paropakara is doing good to someone else. Now there's two other forms which I've taken initial forms are chanting and prayers. For chanting and prayers, we'll be using the virtue of sound. And it is only sound that can create a change in your physical existence. Sound creates constant vibrations which make you feel good. The smallest example I can give you is about we all sit and listen to some kind of music. We are all sad. Let us take an example. We are all sad. For sadness, I have not taken a pill. But the moment one of my favorite songs is played, I feel this, little upliftment within me. Now, how did that happen? Where did the change take place? It is via the virtue of sound. This is exactly what it is about. That there are things which are beyond medicine as well, which can help us understand and build up a physical body that can withstand what might also be coming from your past life. I always, in my biodata, you must have heard that I am a supporter of music therapy. And my guru for music therapy over here is Dr. Margaret Lobo, who is present amongst us in this seminar. If possible, I would request the organizers to organize for a talk by her wherein she's going to explain to you. Because my first exposure to sound and music therapy came because of her in London, wherein she actually demonstrated a patient of stroke who had aphonia, who couldn't speak. But after exposing to sound for a certain period of time, she could actually not answer to your question, but if you sang to her, she sang back to you. So we've got a lot more to explore. But this is what is going to bring a change for your patient. That is chanting, prayers, meditation, and the last one which you do is paropakara, is doing good to the other fellow being. Always do a satkarma, a good deed for any fellow being if given a chance to. You may not see its results now, but if you read the Janapadodvamsa Adhyaya in Charaka, or if you read the epidemiology chapter in Charaka Samhita, therein he talks about today's present day situation, wherein he says in Janapadodvamsa, people die, or when there is an epidemic or a pandemic, which people die? Those people, those having a physical body in this present lifetime, do not have a support of the spiritual aspect of life, and also those who have not done sufficient amount of good deeds or satkarma in their past. Science may not be able to take you to understand this, but this is the virtue of it again. Now, from the physical aspect, of course, we all know that you give medication, you do shamana, you do shodhana, that is, you purify the body, detox the body, and rasayana. But what is most important for Sharira people to understand is that even these things have got an effect on formation of the body. Now, why does the Atma take birth? Again, going back to the same question, why did I come back? Is because I need to complete the Karyakaran Bhava, the cause and effect thing. I need to do Karma Purtata, that is, I need to finish all my duties over here. And how will I take birth? It is my Karma Purtata will be done via Panchamabhut Tattvas. Why? So that I don't need to get bonded again and take birth again on this earth. I can stay up and provide energy to the people living. What is the basic aim of my existence? Is to join the Mula Chaitanya, the basic energy where we came from, and we saw Prakriti and Purusha. And taking birth, its only dharma of the Atma is to be relieved of Janma Janmantar Runanubandha. That means the multiple lifetimes which we take, I need to absolve all of those, and that is why I keep taking birth. And at the same time, do not live with any expectations. I mean, each of these terms I'm giving you subtly. You can think over it. If you find it difficult, you can always question me on it or ask me on it. I will come back. Now, who has asked you to take birth? Who has asked the Atma to take birth? It is all your past karmas in the past lifetimes that keep asking your Atma to take birth again. Go down, clean us, is what they constantly say, and that is why we take birth. Now, at the time of birth, how does the Atma protect itself at the time of birth? That is, it produces Chaitanya Valayas. Chaitanya Valayas means these are charged. I'll show a diagram of this, which I'll be able to explain a little better. These are charged particles of waves which surround us. And where are they produced from? They are produced from the Mula Chaitanya. That means the soul. But again, I have used the term Chaitanya Maya. That means these are not having that much of an energy. Their energy quantums are not charged. And why they are not charged? Because Chaitanya has to do Dehadharana. Now, if Chaitanya spends its own energy into creating waves around itself, which are Chaitanya Maya, then the energy will not be sufficient to do Dehadharana. So Chaitanya first does Dehadharana. I will show the diagram and then explain to you further. This is the diagram. That at time of birth, the red portion that you see is the Chaitanya, and these waves that are created around itself are at the time of birth, which are called as Chaitanya. We are all surrounded by it. And this is a protective layer which the soul produces around itself. My dear friends, you will ask me, where did you see them? I mean, when we did not have the technology to create pictures of aura, we never accepted the existence of aura, right? Now, when the Kiridian camera has come, we all accept the existence of aura. But herein, this is what the Shastra says, that Chaitanya, once it enters inside the body, will create these waves, which will be working as protective waves. But they will work as protective waves only when they are charged. And how do you charge them? Is this Achaitanya Valas need to be charged. And how do you charge them? Is by your prayers, by your upasana, by your chanting. And the quantum of energy is totally dependent on Guru Kripa or the blessings of all who are above. This is the sequence which needs to be followed for existence of a physical body. Like this. How do you charge the Valayas? Is instruct the body to be Ishwarvadi. Ishwarvadi means follow an energy which is of a higher level. Be one with the Atma. This will create an awareness surrounding the Atma, and as one wave gets charged, we'll have the other waves being charged as well. Now, as Ayurveda physicians, what is our role? I mean, I'm talking all about this, about philosophy, which any spiritualist would have spoken to you about. Where, as an Ayurveda physician, do I play a role? Now, this has been the sequence of existence of mankind. This is the progression that we have all seen, right? You will all agree to this. From this stage, we have come up to this stage now, wherein we are using technologically advanced. You will say that my sense organs do not need to be developed because I have a mobile phone by virtue of which I don't need to activate my sense organs or my buddhi, by virtue of which I will be able to see Odile, who is with me from England, or I will be able to talk to Anthea and Paul, who are sitting over there, and I can see them and talk to them at the same time. And now even I don't need to do that. We have artificial intelligence that has been created. Does that mean that this is the end of human life? Is this the end of human race? As an Ayurveda physician, we can be a part of the evolutionary genome. We can treat our patients in such a way by physical, spiritual healing, and say that you can develop Shukra and Shoneta, which is so pure. At the same time, you can also charge your physical body with more energy from the Sattva and create a living being who is very strong physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And how do I do this? By treating the patient and creating your own physical body, which is going to support the genome for the evolution. What are the 4 stages of existence of a Jiva? Life form. From Jiva to Jivatma, and from Atma to Paramatma. That is what has been said in the text which support Ayurveda, and these 4 levels of the soul have been explained. Modern science is yet to even understand the physical existence of soul. Help in raising the status of a human being from a human to God, by virtue of which we will be able to do activities in the physical form which God has been doing without taking the physical form. Beautiful slide. What will I carry with me in the end? When I leave my body, will I be able to carry any of those beautiful articles that have accumulated of wealth all around me? $1 million question, isn't it? Well, this is all that you will be carrying. And this will set in the formula for your next physical embodiment, your next physical birth. That is the journey of your soul. Via a media, you go and join the Paramatma. At this juncture, I would like to call it a day. Thank you very, very much for giving me this opportunity of doing one satkarma or a good deed in life, which I hope is a good deed, which I might be able to make a change in the perspective of looking at Ayurveda merely as a physical body and a physical existence, but more than that. And we as Ayurveda physicians should certainly realize that we are born at a higher physical level, at a higher physical nature, because we can easily understand this material, which seems like difficult to understand. Dr. Rakesh Sharma and his team, the Vice Chancellor, Abhimanyu Kumar sir, you have been very graceful enough for giving me this opportunity and allowing me to present a topic which may not talk about physical aspects of applied form of my science, but certainly applied in the life science. Thank you very much. I thank all my friends who joined from this distant part of the world. It was an immense pleasure to be connecting with you in these times of pandemic. Thank you so much.